Bill and I have been working and experimenting with natural materials for over 40 years. We were based in the arid southwest of the United States. This is our home that you see the buildings, and we're based in near the Mexican border in Arizona, area called Sky Islands. We have been teaching workshops and have built many small, low-cost buildings while educating many non-skilled people how to build their home. We work with a variety of natural materials, but the two main ones are straw and clay. Both are abundantly found. We find it pretty much everywhere where we go. They're low embodied energy, 100% recyclable, and of course, beg to be touched and worked in hand. I come from a family of famous Native American artists. Every sibling, aunt, uncle, cousin works with clay to create sculptures or pottery. My mother, who passed away about 2 years ago, she also worked with clay. She made stoneware pottery that I grew up eating on. Unlike most of the rest of the family, her pottery geared more. Their pottery was more artwork, geared to sell to the tourists. My mother, however, believed strongly in connecting form and function. She was extremely leery of art for art's sake and instilled in me the belief that everything one does should be done in an artful way, whether one is making bread, washing dishes, making a pot, or building a house. When I was in high school, we built as a family a passive solar adobe house in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The house was designed by my mother with curving earth walls, sealed earthen floors, textures and spaces connected inside to outside. The house impacted me then and still impacts me now, and continues to mold what I do today. She had gone to architecture school, not because she believed in architects or architecture, but because she wanted to better understand what that foreign Western abstract way of designing buildings was. Architects, like artists, were foreign concepts to the world she grew up in. Born in Santa Clara Pueblo, in New Mexico, she grew up in a world where when a room was needed, family and friends came together to build. There was no plan, no drawings, no architect. The process was organic, it shifted and grew according to the needs of the family or community. Made from the earth, structures literally grew up out of the earth. As you can see, it's not a world of trees. And when they were no longer needed, the buildings naturally returned back into the earth. Interestingly, in my mother's native language, Tewa, the word for earth and people is the same word, nung. In all their creation stories, it is from the earth that Pueblo people emerged up out of. The earth was used to form and plaster the walls, cover the roofs, make the floors. Building was also not primarily a man's job as it is in the Western world. Men were often the gatherers of materials, but it was the women who did much of the actual building and all of the plastering, which was often a yearly chore. As a family, we continue to come together to build with clay. Here I am with two of my sons, Nito and Panther, plastering a straw bale house. My journey into straw bales began when I was 19. My first husband and I desperately needed a place to live. We decided to build a small structure on the piece of land we had. I would have naturally built with adobes, and adobes are traditional sun-dried mud bricks, which are widely used in the Southwest. But since we had no water, it was winter time, adobes were out of the question. Since we were full-time college students, we needed also something less labor-intensive and quicker to build. One afternoon, my father mentioned straw bales, and it made total sense to me. So we went to the local feed store, bought bales, and proceeded to build a small 200 square foot house. Never having heard of anyone else building with bales, we made it up as we went along. As soon as we were done, I knew this was a good idea. This is the interior of our little house, lived in for 5 years, comfortably with 2 babies. And it was not until 8 years later, when I met Bill, my present partner, that I discovered I had actually not invented straw bale construction. Nebraskans over 100 years ago, after the baling machine was invented, were building with bales, primarily made from prairie grasses. In 1990, in Canelo, Arizona, we hosted our first, and I think it was the first, straw bale workshop. It was another 200 square foot house, small with a simple shed roof made from donated materials. And it started us on a journey writing a book. Interest in straw bale building was starting to blossom everywhere. People were desperate for knowledge. So we packed up our 2 boys, headed around the country, and collected all the photos and how-to info that we could find. We wrote the first straw bale house book. Soon after the book came out, we were invited by Save the Children Foundation, a nonprofit organization down in Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, Mexico, where you could see many people lived in shacks, like the one above, of cardboard, scraps, anything they could find. And this government solution to housing were these to low-income housing were these block houses all in a row, stacked for miles and miles of them. In the area, actually, over 1 million acres of wheat was being grown. So after every harvest, the straw was being burned, and to clear the way for the next crop to be grown, causing immense pollution problems and allergies, of course. So it became a great waste product. So together with Save the Children, we began using the excess straw to build simple, low-cost housing. We experimented with lots of low-tech techniques such as sandbag foundations, light clay roofs, exterior bamboo pins, and of course clay finishes. The clay cord never failed to draw in the kids, of course the women. So we did several of these houses. And we were learning as we were going, we were learning what were the local materials we had available in the area. It was difficult because in Mexico, cement is synonymous for material. If you weren't using cement, it wasn't considered a real house. Initially, we had a hard time getting people to accept clay and, of course, bales. They'd come and kick the houses to test to fall down. But for them, building with these materials was going backwards in time. And suddenly, the peso devalued overnight and the price of cement doubled. So clay and straw instantly became much more accepted because of the cost. Save the Children amazingly received a grant to build a new office building. So they decided to use many of the same materials we were using for the low-cost housing. So bales were used for the exterior walls, clay plasters for the base coats and the interior. The design was a collaboration between us, the office workers, and the family that we were working with down there in Mexico. Having no building codes, many decisions were made on the spot as the building was going up. The interior walls of the courtyard area were made from straw clay block. These blocks are similar to traditional adobes, but they are have a much higher quantity of straw. They're pressed, the mix is pressed into a mold and then dried in the sun. However, since they have a much higher straw content, they're more insulative, lighter weight, much more weather resistant than adobes. In one of the communities, one of the women was set up to run a factory of these things where anyone in the neighborhood could come and be paid a peso for every block they made. And a similar mix we discovered could go on as a very thick plaster over the bales. It being lightweight and fibrous, we put it on thick without worries of it cracking or immediately eroding off the walls in the rain, which more traditional clay sand plasters did. Using the same mix, we could also do built-in furniture in combination with some reeds and bamboo. We could build in shelves without the use of any wood. The colorful exterior was frescoed was lime plastered, which was frescoed, which means that a pigment mixed with water is painted on the surface while the lime is still fresh. Textured and scored concrete floors made the lush, courtyard, and the cement mimicked flagstone. Local clay plasters were used in the interiors. Here, even the structural concrete roof beams were plastered with clay. Built-in shelving was also plastered with clay and then linseed oiled for extra abrasion and water resistant. Local reeds were also used to form the vaulted ceilings and roofs in many of the rooms. We played with many different cement pavers, which were poured in place, grouted, and then sealed with oil. Base of the clay walls were also sealed with oil to make a simple baseboard. Splashes of color, like you see the blue, were frescoed lime plaster again. For me, being part of this design and construction of this office building was an incredible learning experience. It was a great collaboration, and we all, much of what we still do today is influenced by that office building. One of the families that was working on the office building was also inspired. After the building office was finished, they started building their own house. And most of the materials they used were absolutely free, and they did all the labor themselves. This is a straw bale. So their neighbors were totally inspired by the building as well. So there were about a dozen women and their families that were squatting on a piece of land out by the dumps, a very poor part of town. And the government couldn't help them because they had no legal proof of the land they owned. So they came and asked us if we would help teach them how to build their own houses. So it began a whole process for about a couple of years. These women building each other's houses. We used a lot of the recycled dumps, concrete pieces were strewn about on the roadside, was collected to use for foundations and floors. We had access to free bales for the load-bearing walls through Save the Children organization. The local reeds, called carizo, were used for exterior pins. City donated all the clay we needed. We would bring groups down from the States to work with the women. We raised about $500, which was enough to buy 2 windows, 1 door, some roofing materials for each house. So for over 2 years, this group of women, again, they went from house to house, and they actually completed 1 dozen of these little houses. We ended up calling the project Casas que Cantan, or in English, houses that sing. At first, the men were hesitant and they didn't want to be a part of this project. They would just usually drink beer in the shade. As time went by, they began to feel proud, and they actually began to help out as well. This project brought the community together in great ways. Friendships were made from different cultures coming together, and it was just a great event. Turning once more, we came back to Canelo. With all what we had learned, we began building a bunch of what is here. We ran a lot of workshops, teaching, spreading all the skills we had learned and experimented with. All our buildings are small scale, ranging from less than 100 square feet to 200. I think the largest one we have is 350 square feet. Ranging from cottages, studios, to sheds, all built during workshops. Notice that the smaller the size and scale of the building, the more likely we were to choose local materials over store-bought ones. The smaller the building, the more likely we were to invest the effort in artistic details. I was always amazed at how big an influence the scale had on what choices we made throughout the building project. So we built many sheds, different interiors. Every building had a different plaster or finish or paint. When you look at now is, more sheds. You could see it was great that not every wall, every corner was done differently than the others, mostly for experimentation that we've now been able to watch for over 20 years. We were able to sculpt shapes easily using the straw clay mixes. We were able to play endlessly with textures, play with colors, play with forms and shape. This is our little pump house with bottle windows and a fake thatch. We also, through these years, continued learning from people from all sorts of different countries. We started hosting workshops, people from Scotland, lime experts from England and Scotland. We learned straw clay infills from builders in Germany. The blue agave on this building was done by a Japanese plaster master, Shuhei-san. This is our elegant bike house. The outdoor shower for campers. You can see the stone walls meeting the cob walls, which are plastered with lime and stained. Sculpted windows. When you're building with clay and straw, these materials are amazingly sculptural. They also give great texture, and I'm amazed how long they're able to wear outside, even uncovered without a roof. This is clay paint, some interior with clay floor, more clay, sculpted bench, a curving adobe wall. This is a passive solar little building. That curved adobe wall forms a shower. And you can see apple juice jars there used as glass block. Again, central shapes, beveled edges, clay and lime mixes. Given my family's background, I had sculpting. I had a hard time seeing a wall not as a canvas. To me, buildings are like giant pots. pretty much. It's a different, we started doing a lot of travel through Europe. The boys grew up. So this sculpting is in Germany, the one with the tree and the butterfly. The top one to the left is a native bee wall. And then there's a sculpting done in Scotland. These are a variety of carvings that I like to do. My relatives, they usually carving into the pots to do design work, and I kind of design the walls instead. So layers of clay, different colors, are built up, and then they're carved away to reveal the layers below. This is a recent one we did in Costa Rica last year, I think, and it was great. It was great fun having 20 people all on there carving away. This large circle is a and so is the gray. More carvings. And the one on the top right is also layers of lime. So you can carve not only with clay, but with lime as well. This is my sister is a sculptress. She has a art gallery in New Mexico. So she hired us to do a movie screen. So the lime plaster is actually a movie screen with the carved edges. This is part of a building that was done in Washington, D.C., just a demonstration building where we did some clay examples of polishes and carvings. And a truth window. You can see the straw bales in the center. Started doing a bunch of museum jobs. This is a clay sculpted straw bale bench in a ceramic museum. And the backdrop is a bunch of sheetrock or gypsum board plastered with different clay textures. This is a mud exhibition outside the Denver Art Museum in Colorado. And we were working with the public to expose them to what sort of things you can build with clay. This is still Denver. So you could see we were doing a sort of snake-like playground thing for, and that was a clay pizza oven sitting there. At the Native American Museum at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., my aunt was commissioned to do 5 large earthen sculptures. So she hired us and our Mexican contingency to help design and construct them. You can see we were using straw clay blocks, cob, lots of clay, layers within layers, sculptures within sculptures, with the hope that someday, when they eroded, if they ever eroded, new things would be revealed and exposed. It was a great project. Here's some of the finished, more female type sculpture. Solid earth. So there were layers of actually rammed earth in the center and colored clays. This is the front. Brown clay that you see was actually dug from the site itself. The red clay was found nearby. And that blue belly button is actually a native clay that came donated by one of the native nations in North Dakota. On the back side, you could see there's cycles of the moon. At an arboretum in Minnesota, we were to build a small clay house, again, to work with the public and for kids to come and learn how to build with earth. These are sandbags that were filled and then packed, dampened, and compacted. Kind of like rammed earth, but in bags. Then the whole structure was then plastered with clay, and a small reciprocating roof went on top in the center. It's a sculpting cob ovens, which make great bread, of course, great pizzas, great for smaller projects to teach people how to work with clay on. These are two boys, older sons, who have not attended a day of school. Each found their own way as they grew up and took what we had to offer, added their own talent to it all, and they're off in building. This is a family-designed straw bale house that also one of the sons just finished building. It's about 600 square foot little house. The interior has a curving adobe wall, quite reminiscent of his grandmother's influence. They have clay plasters, circular clay floors. Some of the details of the house. You can see the nice play of light on the curving walls, corner shelves, a truth window, earthen floors, and an earth bench. These ageless materials used worldwide, such as clay and straw, of course, are touchable by all, that naturally bind us to those who came before us and to those who come after us. And they come full circle. We emerge up out of the earth, we care, we create until we are the earth.